Hi there, my name is Michelle, and it all began when I was 8 years old. Upon my parents' divorce, I found myself abruptly residing with my grandparents. After relocating to a different state, Dad made a few phone calls before poofing and disappearing entirely. Mom wed a wealthy businessman and then went off to Europe after a couple of years. That was the day my mom departed. We were embraced tightly as she wiped away her tears. "I will come to see you, darling. I swear," she reassured him. I came to trust her. Sometimes children act foolishly like that. Her word was kept for a while. She would drop by once a year on my birthday, without fail. No spouse, no fresh bundle of joy. The fact that Mom had a sister whom I had never met was completely slipped my mind. However, Mom would appear, brimming with presents, the scent of pricey perfume, and tales of her wonderful new life. Normalcy resumed. Going to class, making friends, and acting normally were all things I did. However, this void was always there. Where my parents ought to have been lies a void. It was filled to the brim by Grandpa and Grandma. On weekends, Grandpa would take me fishing and show me the ropes. There was never a moment when Grandma wasn't whipping up a delicious meal, and she'd even let me help out by showing me her special recipes. Grandpa fell ill when I was 13 years old. The physicians diagnosed cancer. It was violent and swift. Just the other minute he was there, demonstrating how to fix a dripping faucet while making his usual cheesy comments. He vanished the following day. Only Grandma, me, and a few neighbors attended the modest burial. My mom was unable to attend. "Business emergency," she stated while speaking on the phone. The thought of yelling at her to tell her that her own father had died crossed my mind, but that was not the case for me. To my mom, I just replied, "Okay, I understand." Mom abruptly stopped coming to visit me every year when I was 16. Just an apology and no explanation. Complete and utter quiet. My role in initiating phone conversations between us diminished as our relationship deteriorated. On the other hand, I dove headfirst into my studies, successfully completed high school with passing grades. Not much, but it was sufficient to get me admitted to a nearby university. Classes, part-time jobs, and socializing with friends made those years fly by. My time at graduation had flown by, and I was soon throwing my cap in the air. I got a job at a small marketing agency right after I graduated from college. It wasn't flashy, but it was necessary for survival and provided direction in my life. It was all right. Not bad, not spectacular, just all right. At Grandma's place, I had my pals, my routine, and my safe haven. But life, that cunning scoundrel, had different intentions. The problem began with Grandma's forgetfulness. Details at first, like the day and where she had placed her spectacles. I first blamed it on being older, but things quickly escalated. Sometimes she would leave the stove on and then go out in her pajamas. The news of Alzheimer's disease hit like a ton of bricks. It was challenging, but I did my best to tend to her needs. As I watched my mother, my rock, deteriorate, it was like being in hell. I held her hand the day she passed away. For the first time in months, she gave me her full attention. Her voice was scarcely audible as she whispered, "Michelle, my love." After that, she disappeared. While fighting back tears, I contacted Mom. "Mom, she's gone." A considerable delay was heard from the opposite side. "Oh, Michelle," she eventually uttered, her voice strangely low. I apologized deeply. "I am currently unable to escape. Job is just insane. I think you get it." To that end, I was the only one involved in funeral arrangements. Casket, floral, and eulogy writing duties completed. The ceremony was modest, similar to Grandpa's. I was more alone than ever when I saw them bring the coffin down. Returning to Grandma's house after the funeral was like coming home. It seemed too vast and lifeless. However, the idea of departing was too much for me to handle. Here I grew up, surrounded by the love and memories of my parents. Normalcy resumed. I dove headfirst into my job in an effort to make up for Grandma's absence. Time slipped away. Next, a year. Second, two. Unexpectedly, Mom gave me a call. "Michelle, my darling," she chirped, her voice unusually upbeat. "My good news is astounding. Your sister plans to attend university in the United States. What a thrilling prospect." Unprepared, I blinked. "Yeah, I guess that's nice." Mom went on, "Listen, here's the thing," her voice adopting that traitorous sweetness she exhibited whenever she desired anything. "She insists on going solo, but I'm concerned about her safety. It was my sincere wish that she could remain with you." My gut churned. "Mom, I don't think—" "Now, Michelle," she interrupted me, her voice abruptly becoming harsh, "let us not lose sight of the true owner of that house. Just so you know, I'm the immediate successor. Allowing you to reside there is a very gracious gesture on my part. Taking care of your sister would be the bare minimum you could do." The impact was as sharp as a slap. I mumbled something about how Grandma had bequeathed the house to me. She wrote a will. My spine tingled at the sound of my mother's icy laughter. "Oh, my darling, you have no idea how these things function. As long as you lend a hand to your sister, I promise I won't take legal action to claim that house. Do you get it?" My thoughts were racing. Will she be able to steal the house? On the day my sister came, I was filled with despair at the prospect of losing my home, the only remaining link to my grandparents, and my lack of knowledge about inheritance law only served to deepen my despair. As I stood at the airport, clutching a placard that read, "Chloe," I couldn't help feel foolish. Her only appearances in public were in Mom's Facebook shots, where she always appeared model-ready. In my mind, I could see her well. Am I ever mistaken? With her confident stride out of the arrival gate, she was nearly invisible to me. The sibling I'd seen in images didn't resemble this girl at all. Well, she was ideal. Overly ideal, as if she had been plucked from a celebrity impersonation database. "Chloe!" I panicked and yelled out. She pivoted, her enormous shades resting on a nose that was most certainly not the one in the previous pictures. "Oh my God, you must be Michelle," she remarked with a tone that betrayed her contempt. I could see the results of her plastic surgery as she approached. Her physique screamed masterpiece. Her cheekbones were sharp as knives and her lips were perked up like life rafts. Being close to her made me feel like a potato. Chloe began babbling demands like a 5-year-old reciting a Christmas list while we waited for a porter, because evidently that was all the rage now. "We have this incredible maid in Europe who, takes care of everything. Additionally, a chef. Have you made arrangements for that?" Quickly, she sought a response. "Plus, I'll have to bring my own rig. Obviously, nothing inexpensive. Perhaps a Mercedes-Benz." My jaw dropped as I stood there. Was this woman serious? "Flo," I whispered softly, attempting to maintain an accent, "my job is just like any other. Too expensive for me?" With a wave of her well-kept hand, she interrupted me. "No big deal. It will be handled by Mom. We should leave right now." I escorted her to my weathered, long-since reserved Honda when we reached the parking area. After glancing at it, Chloe went completely bonkers. "What kind of squalor is this?" Every statement landed like a blow. "You expect me to ride in that thing?" She pulled out her phone before I could say anything. "Mom, who?" "Oh, it's just me. Michelle is attempting to get me to ride in something that you won't believe. Seriously, it's a trap waiting to happen. So yeah, well, all right, I love you as well." With an arrogant grin on her face, she hung up and faced me. "The automobile service is being organized by Mom. That rust bucket can be yours to keep." After waiting for half an hour, Chloe's elegant town vehicle arrived at Grandma's house. The moment we entered, Chloe's acting took a whole new level. "Ah, it smells like old people and mothballs in here," she cried out. This could be harmful to your health or anything. We must abandon all of this and begin again." As she trampled over the house, pointing out flaws in everything from the faded carpet to the family portraits displayed on the walls, I gazed in terror. Upon entering my bedroom, she carelessly dropped her high-end purse onto the bed. "I claim this room as mine. Rest easy. Anywhere. I have no idea. Perhaps the sofa." Words failed me as I stood there. I used to sleep here. My retreat. The spot where I sobbed myself to sleep following Grandma's passing. Here is where I rejoiced upon landing my very first job, where I preserved every memory. Seeing Chloe's expression, though, made me realize that arguing would serve no purpose. If I dared to disagree with this girl, she would subject me to her usual barrage of demands. A brand-new Mercedes was waiting for me in the garage when I returned from work 1 week after Hurricane Chloe had made landfall in my life. Someone had rudely pushed my battered Honda out onto the roadway. What the hell? In a low voice, I crept inside the house. As she scrolled through her phone, Chloe was splayed out on the couch. She paid no attention at all. There it is, my brand-new ride. My mom remembered to get it for me. You were wasting space with that useless item of yours. Felt like I'd seen it all the day after that. Well, I was completely incorrect. Feeling weary yet eager for a peaceful evening, I made my way home from work. On the contrary, I stepped into anarchy. Strange men in overalls were hauling out old furniture and bringing in new stuff I'd never seen before. The home was full of them. As the chaos unfolded, I discovered Chloe in the garden, enjoying a cocktail while acting as a mini-dictator. She spoke the words, "Oh, you're home," without even looking at me. "You don't need to be concerned. I will take care of everything. This dump required a significant renovation. My mother agreed with me when I said it was uninhabitable. My gratitude is due to you." In a horrifying scene, I witnessed the removal of Grandma's antique rocking chair, Grandpa's hand-built bookcase, and the coffee table upon which I had diligently completed my homework for many years. "Stop!" I sobbed. "You can't throw those out." Unfortunately, the moment had passed. All I could do was stand there and watch as my memories were thrown out the window. With tears falling from my eyes, I contacted Mom that evening. "How could you let her do this?" My body erupted in tears. "This is my home." On the other side of the phone, there was a considerable lag. Even Mom's voice sounded frigid when she talked. "I own that house, so let's get that straight. I'm letting you reside there because it's in my heart to do so. I am the true heir. Perhaps we should reevaluate this arrangement if you are unable to comprehend it." It seemed like someone had punched me in the stomach. "You won't," I stutter-spoken. "Just be thankful and be quiet," Mom sternly told her. "Please, for the love of God, make an effort to treat your sister kinder. You're being helped by her." A dead end was reached. With my phone in my palm, I felt as though my entire world was collapsing. It took 2 weeks to finish the renovation. My life was gradually being replaced by Chloe's fashion sense every time I returned home. A clinical interior design magazine depicted the once cozy house where I had spent my formative years. I felt like an outsider in my own home as I stood in the living room after it was all over. White paint had replaced the once familiar floral wallpaper. The plush antique couch that Grandma had loved had been replaced with a hideous leather hulk that offered no more comfort than a rocking chair. No longer were the cherished family portraits displayed on the walls. Chloe took the master bedroom, so I had to withdraw to the second smallest bedroom. I couldn't escape the overwhelming sense that I was losing more than just my belongings. The bond I had formed with my grandparents and the life I had created here was slipping away. My worst fears were realized when Chloe chose to make our house into a wild party hub. A couple of pals over on a Friday night was the beginning, but before long it felt like you were living in a nightclub that never shut down. It seemed like Chloe's college pals would show up at the house every weekend, and occasionally even throughout the week. All of them shared her traits: affluent, conceited, and condescending toward those they saw as lower class, which obviously included me. I happened to overhear Chloe and her buddy having a conversation in the kitchen one night. I assure you I was not eavesdropping. I was merely attempting to get something to eat before I went to my room to get away from the mayhem. "Who's that?" I overheard a girl asking. "She looks kind of old to be here." An ear-piercing screech escaped Chloe's lips. "Michelle, that's all. It's as if she's some distant relative. She is allowed to work here as a maid by Mom." Not caring if they could hear, I banged the refrigerator shut. I was rushing back to my room, tears in my eyes. Where does her courage come from? How dare it? This was my home. After Chloe got out of bed at about noon, the following morning, I went to face her. "No more parties," I declared, my voice barely audible as I protested. "This can't continue. It's becoming old to return home to an unfamiliar house full of people. The chaos, the noise, it's all too much." The expression on her face was one of annoyance. "You kill the energy, man. I see why you're so socially isolated." "This has nothing to do with friends," I stated. "The next-door residents are wailing. Because to your noise, the elderly and families with children who live next door are unable to sleep." By shrugging, Chloe indicated that it was not her concern. They should move if they can't handle a little fun. The doorbell sounded just as I was ready to give her the silent treatment. Looking exhausted and irritated, it was the neighbor, Mrs. Johnson. She spoke up and said, "Michelle, my darling, I'm sorry to be a nuisance, but these parties, they're becoming ridiculous. My rose bushes were the site of an unfortunate incident last night." My face flushed with embarrassment. "Excuse me, Mrs. Johnson, never again will this occur. I assure you," she said. I immediately turned to Chloe after shutting the door. "I'm done. No more gatherings. I am being quite serious here. Mom called me the following day." I should have anticipated Chloe's hasty approach to her. "Michelle," Mom said with a harsh tone, "are you attempting to exert dominion over your sister?" I inhaled deeply. "No, Mom, that's not how it is. There is no control over the parties. Apologies, but the neighbors are not happy." "The neighbors?" My mother abruptly ended our conversation. "The neighbors don't matter to anyone. There you are, attempting to sabotage your sister's efforts to meet people and have a typical college experience." "But Mom—" "No buts," she yelled out. "I will not tolerate it if you disrupt Chloe's social life or her schoolwork. Do you get what I'm saying?" A sudden jolt went through my entire being. Every bit of resentment and fury that I had been repressing finally burst forth. "No, Mom, I'm confused," I muttered, my voice quivering with anguish. "My current situation is intolerable. You are free to return your beloved Chloe to Europe at your leisure, but I will no longer serve as her nanny and punching bag." I feared she would answer, so I abruptly ended the call. The task had been completed by me. At last, I had spoken up for who I was. Another unexpected turn of events occurred right after I believed I had finally spoken out. Unannounced, Mom arrived at my doorway 1 week following my ultimatum. I had never seen her like this before. She appeared exhausted and worn out. She spoke in a trembling voice and said, "Michelle, we need to talk." My head whirling, I let her in. She arrived to take the house, to pull Chloe back across Europe. She instead delivered a surprise that left me whirling. Tears filling her eyes. "I'm sick, Michelle," she said. "The doctors, they don't think I have much time left." The floor seemed to have dropped under me. "What then? Mom, what are you talking about?" She then discussed several rare diseases using medical jargon I couldn't grasp. Mom was dying, though, and the main point was obvious. She responded, "That's why I need you, sweetheart," grasping my hand. "Chloe, she will need someone when I am away. Someone to be by her side and guide her. She will have you." I need to know. Should you perform well, I will also ensure your needs are met. You will own the residence, free and clear. I blinks. But I already live in the house. Grandma's will. Mom waved a cheap hand dismissively. I am the main heir as Grandma's daughter. If I wanted to, I could claim at least half the house. My head went whirl. I need time to think, stuttered. Mom nodded, brushing away a tear. Of course, sweetie. I will be here for a few days. We have more to talk about. 2 days like this were strange. Mom praised Flo's great taste at every opportunity, fawning over the renovations she had done. I said nothing, terrified to criticize it rudely. The oddest aspect, though, was Flo's behavior. Someone had turned on a switch. The party girl was gone, replaced by a flawless angel who helped with dishes and talked in a sickeningly lovely voice. She even volunteered to prepare supper one evening, although I observed she bought takeout and tried to pass it off as her own cooking. Mom ate it both literally and symbolically. She said, "See how thoughtful your sister is," cooing. "You two will be rather wonderful for one another." I could have wanted to shout. Mom could not see through this performance. But every time I opened my mouth to object, I thought of Mom's comments on the house and her illness. Could I honestly risk losing everything? Mom cornered me in the kitchen on the last night of her visit. With eyes begging, "Have you thought about what I said?" she questioned. I drew in a long breath. "Indeed," I answered at last. "I'll try, for you." Mom's expression brightened. Something she hadn't done in years. She drew me into an embrace. "I appreciate you, honey. You are not sure what this means to me. Knowing Flo would be in capable care, I can return to Europe." The ink had hardly dry when Mom left before Hurricane Flo returned grandly. Looking forward a peaceful evening, I left work early the next week and headed home. I knew something was odd as soon as I started down the street. Some EDN tracks had so strong bass that my car windows started to tremble. I came running through the front door to discover my worst dream realized. People crowded the house, drunk college students, dubious-looking older men, even a couple kissing on my grandmother's antique table. Chocolate. Over the music, I let out screams. W-H-E-R-E-A-R-E-Y-O-U. I grabbed hands and pushed through the throng, avoiding spilling drinks. Flo's room's door locked when I arrived. I booted it open without thinking. Flo was there, knotted with some man I had never seen before. Startled, they both raised their heads to me. "What they?" Flo shivered. "Get out." I felt something crack in me. All the resentment I had been storing for months burst forth. "Not, you left," I roared. "All of you. This celebration is past." Turning down the music, I rushed through the house, yelling at everybody to leave. I snatched the phone when they moved insufficiently. "I'm calling the police." I raised a yell. "Anyway, still here in 5 minutes is getting arrested." That started them on a motion. The house went empty in record time, leaving behind a mess that turned my stomach over. Rising from her bed, Flo's face contorted with fury. She spit, "What the hell is wrong with you? You simply get jealous since I know how to have fun. Well, let me say something. I was expelled out of college, hence right now I may party whenever I want, and there is nothing you can do about it." Something inside me snapped. I reached for her arm and hauled her to the front door without thinking. Sure. See me." I pushed her outdoors, then hurried back to her room. I hauled armloads of her luxury clothing out into the grass. "Are you looking to have fun? Go to another party somewhere else." With a raspy voice, I yelled. Neighbors had gathered by now, attracted by the disturbance. Mrs. Johnson's voice said something about how it was about time I stood up for myself, but I didn't care about the audience. I cared about nothing at all. My phone rang while I remained sat on the floor, back against the front door. The name Mom displayed on the screen. Breathing deeply, I responded, getting ready for the storm. "How dare you?" Mom's words sliced angrily over the speaker. "Chloe just gave me a tearful call. After all I have done for you, you lazy little reptile." I laughed, a true, honest laugh bubbling up from somewhere deep inside me, and cut her off. "Everything you have done for me?" My voice surprisingly steady, I said, "Mom, that's rich, truly rich. Don't you approach me, young lady, in that tone." Mom started to snarl. "I'll remind you that house's legitimate successor is me. I could take it away from you with a quick finger snap." I started to grin over my face. "No, Mom, you are not able. Yesterday I visited with a lawyer. Grandma's will is absolutely strong. She turned everything over to me. Not you. Less than not Chloe, not mine. And you have no control over it either." Mom seemed to be breathing shackily. Her voice had changed totally as she spoke once more. "Let us not be hurried now, Michelle. We can surely work something out. If you bring Chloe back, I'll make it worthwhile. I have properties in Europe, a vineyard and a seafront home. All of it might be yours." For a second, I considered it. Sounds great from a villa near the water. But then I thought back to the tranquility I had experienced in the minutes following Chloe's expulsion, that relief at last defending myself. There was no villa worth giving that up. "Thanks, but no thanks," I answered with great conviction. "Grandma left her savings with me. For me to live comfortably, it is more than plenty. Nothing from you is either wanted or needed." I hung up straight away, blocking Chloe's number as well as hers. Sitting in the silent house, I sensed a weight release from my shoulders. Possibly for the first time ever, for the first time in years, I was really free. The next few weeks were a mumble of activity. I poured myself, both physically and metaphorically, into straightening the wreckage Chloe left behind. I cleaned floors, painted walls, and started gently to take back my space. Mrs. Johnson stated something one day as I was chatting across the fence that caused my heart to skip a beat. "You know," she remarked casually, "I noticed some furniture at the flea market last week that looked exactly like your grandmother's old pieces. Though I felt it was unfortunate to see it there, I reasoned you must have sold it during the restoration." I went to my car after thanking her, my pulse thumping. I was meandering about the flea market 1 hour later, and there were Grandma's old rocking chair, Grandpa's bookcase, even the coffee table where I had studied for years. I paid a fraction of what they were worth to buy them all back off from. As I hugged the rocking chair, tears in my eyes, the merchant stared at me oddly. I didn't give a damn. Turned one of the extra bedrooms into a copy of Grandma's old living room over the next several days. I felt as I set the familiar furniture and hung the old family pictures back on the walls that I was reconstructing more than simply a room. I was reconstructing my relationship to the folks who had loved me without conditions. Years have gone by since then. Right now, the house is calm and peaceful. Sometimes I consider all that has happened about Mom and Chloe and the life I thought I wanted, while seated in Grandma's rocking rocker, reading a book or simply savoring the quiet. Knowing I had severed links to the only family I have left, I will not pretend it doesn't hurt occasionally. Then I look about the house I have recovered at the life I have created for myself, and I know I made the correct decision.